get the valves adjusted on my dirt bike. At least check and see if they need to be adjusted, and go through the process, show you how to do it, how to find top dead center, make sure you actually have top dead center, and how to check the valves. And what we need to do is take the valve cover off. That way we can expose the valves to find top dead center. You want to make sure that you can find top dead center. The way that I like doing that is take the spark plug out, and I'll put a screwdriver down inside the spark plug hole. That way when you're rotating the crankshaft, you can watch the piston come up when the screwdriver is at the highest point. That is going to be when you're at top dead center. Now the nut is what you use to spin the crankshaft, and according to the manual you only turn it counterclockwise. And this next port here, when you're spinning the crankshaft, you will see 3 lines. One will be a singular line, and the next set will be 2 lines together, maybe 1/8 of an inch apart. Those 2 lines are the ones that you're going to focus on when setting the timing. Alright, so we're at top dead center now, and you can see that line on the left side is in line with that notch on the case. So that's the second line. As you're rotating the crankshaft counterclockwise, there's one more line right below it. You go past that one and you stop on that second line when it's in line with that notch. Now when you find top dead center, your cam lobes should not be touching the valve buckets. And when you're at true top dead center, these valve buckets will move easily. Every single one you can move. For the exhaust side, the minimum clearance is 0.17 millimeters. If you look at your filler gauge, the top number is going to be inches, the bottom number is going to be millimeters. So it's 1.78 millimeters, but 1.7. This is the minimum clearance for the 2 exhaust valves. And it fits in there easy. There's no drag. This one has a little bit of a drag to it. And the maximum that it can be is 0.22. We'll see how this one fits in there. That actually fits in there with little to no drag, so we're gonna have to adjust the shims on those to bring it within spec. And the minimum for the intake is 0.10. And that fits under there no problem. And the maximum is 0.15. And that fits under there with no drag, so we're going to have to reshim all four. And this is the formula for finding the size shim that you're going to need. It's going to be A equals B minus C plus D. So A is your new shim size, which is what we're trying to find. B is the measured valve clearance, so we're going to have to see what the clearance is at now. C is the valve clearance specification, so whatever millimeter setting you want it at. And then D is going to be the present shim size. We need to find the current measured valve clearance. So this valve is going to be current measurement 0.45. This valve current measurement 0.43. Call both of these 0.30. D represents the present shim size. We'll add all these onto the equation. This one is 3.1. 3.1. 2.3. 2.6. Now we have to do B minus C, which is 0.25. Plus D, which is 2.6. So it's going to make this 2.85. Which makes A 2.85. And then we're going to do the same calculation for the remaining three. So now we need to find our new shims, and we can put everything back together. I have this Hot Chems complete valve shim kit. And for this one, we're looking for a 2.47. Which we either have 2.45 or 2.5, which we're closer to 2.45, so that's what we'll go with. This one will be 3.27. So we're going to go with a 3.25. This one is 2.85. And this one is 2.83, which we're closer to 2.85, so we're just going to go with a 2.85. Now we'll get these put back in the right spot, put everything back together, and we'll check our clearances one more time to make sure we're within spec. I'm going to start getting all these put back in there. I'm going to put the shim in first, drop it into place. Right there in the center. And this is the same bucket that came out. exhaust cam will have this on it. The exhaust cam is bigger than the intake cam, so you really can't put them in the wrong way. You want to make sure your valve lobes are facing away from each other and pointed slightly up. Now before you put your cam caps back on, you want to make sure that you have these two on here, which these keep the cams from sliding around. Now the cam cap has these grooves. That's what those stay pins sit into. Now you can see on the cap how it has numbers. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that is the sequence you use to tighten them down. They only go to 87 inch-pounds, so I'm not going to use this to make them tight, just to snug them down. Have that first O-ring right here. It's underneath this cap. And you have your second one that goes on top of the cap, which is not really important right now because we're still going to check the valve clearances again. But I didn't have that bottom O-ring in the first time I put this engine back together, and a lot of oil was seeping out of this weep hole on the side of the head. So if you have a lot of oil coming out of the weep hole on the side of your head here, it's going to be one of these O-rings or both of them. I'm going to put the timing chain tensioner back on. Now that everything's back on, we're going to spin the engine for 2 full revolutions and then recheck the valve clearance. That's one. And that is two. Valve buckets are all loose, which means we're back at top dead center. .20 goes all the way through with drag. All the way through with drag. So our exhaust clearances are both at .20. Now the intake's max is .15. This is a .17, which I cannot get in there. But it will go under that one. So this one's still a little bit off. .15. Well, this one should be .13. Which the closest I have is .127. And it fits under there with drag. .20 will not fit under there, so 1 out of 4 is still out of spec. So we're going to take it back off and readjust this one. But first I got to find out now what the correct valve clearance is. Now the clearance of this one is 0.17. Which is .02 out of specification. Alright, so I took all of these back out. I left the exhaust cam on. That way I didn't have to tie up the tensioner chain again. And I just took off the cap cover, the cam cap cover, and I took out the intake cam, and that was it. Then I took this valve bucket out because that's the one that was out of specification. I replaced the shim, put it back together. Now I'm going to give it 2 full revolutions again, and we'll check one more time the valve clearance. And now that one at 1.27 fits in there with drag. So now we have all of our valve clearances within specification. And we'll check that our timing is still good. You can see that notch lined up with the case. And that timing mark. And that one lined up with the case. Another way to check if those are lining up properly with the case, you can count 12 pins between this first notch here and this one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Valves are adjusted properly, timing is set. Now we can put it back together and it should fire up pretty easily now. Now it's time to see if we can get this thing to fire up.